I want to say happy International Women's Day. I think it's every day is International Women's Day, but especially today. And we have two women who are joining us to talk to us about some exciting and interesting and hard conversations. And right now I will introduce both Rachel Moore and Janie Cohen. I'm going to read their bios. Rachel Moore, the one with the triangle behind her, is the Executive Director and Director of Exhibitions at the Helen Day Art Center in Stowe, Vermont. She has been with the Art Center since 2010, first as an independent curator, and then as Assistant Director and Curator until 2016. Rachel received her MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and her BFA from Alfred University. She is currently chair of Stowe Arts and Cultural Council, a board of the Town of Stowe, and a steering committee member of REAL, Racial Equity Alliance of Lamoille. Aside from her position as director of the Art Center, Rachel is an interdisciplinary artist and independent curator. She has exhibited her work in museums and galleries nationally and internationally, including, let's see, we've got the Macedonian Museum of Contemporary Art in Greece, the Figge, or is it Figge? I think it's Figge, is that right? I've heard it called that.
Whatever you want.
Okay, great. I like to say Figge, the Figge Museum in Iowa, the TinT Museum in Washington, and the Pamil Fine Art Gallery in Puerto Rico. She has received grants from the Seattle Art Museum, Vermont Arts Council, and she has been an artist in residence twice at the Vermont Studio Center, as well as at Pilchuck Glass School. She's represented by two galleries, one in Seattle and one in Boise, Idaho. Rachel also is a big fan of Brussels sprouts, and she is an Aries. Janie Cohen has directed the Fleming Museum of Art at the University of Vermont since 2002 and has served in curatorial positions for 15 years prior, both independently and at the Fleming. Janie received her master's degree from the Institute of Fine Arts at New York University. As a Picasso scholar, she has curated exhibitions and published on the artist in the US, Germany, Netherlands, and Spain. Janie has served as president of the board of the New England Museum Association, on the nominating committee of the American Alliance of Museums, and as a site visitor and grant reviewer for the AAM and Institute of Museum and Library Services, respectively. She still is in her home state of Vermont, where she works, where she lives, where she breathes, where she also enjoys Brussels sprouts with maple syrup, and she is surprisingly a Libra. So without, I don't know why I'm surprised. Without further ado, Rachel and Janie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I also want to say that I am a delighted have been a resident of the Studio Center 4 times, and I'm so grateful for all that you do.
Excellent.
So I am going to jump right in.
Do it.
I have been really interested in Rachel's experience and involvement in the art world as an artist, as a curator, and as an arts administrator, all at the same time. And the fact that at the core, I feel that at the core of all that you do is really social practice. And I know that this goes way back in your own artistic practice. And even specifically how your work connects to specific communities, studying the communities that you made work in and listening to them, and dealing with really tough issues, dealing with issues of inequity and with historic wrongdoing. So I know, and then as a curator, you've brought work, a lot of really tremendous work to the Art Center that also centers social practice. So one of the things, I'm just going to jump right into this, is that you are, on behalf of your institution, about to make a change, pretty significant name change. And it strikes me that what you're doing will be drawing on all of your experience, in all of these realms that you inhabit. And and most importantly, from the values that drive your work and have driven your work for a long time. So you and I have talked about this a little bit, and it's a really challenging and fascinating situation. And so I want to ask you to jump right in and just share with us, what it is you're doing and the process that you have, that you have been following. I also should note that I think you're not the first director to take this on, but you may be the last. So I'm also really curious in this, in how you're talking to your community and listening to your community.
Well, thank you, Janie. That's a great way to start. Jump right in. And Kristen, thank you so much for pulling this together and inviting us here to have this conversation. I think that it's really important and to be really open and transparent about our processes that we're going through as artists or leaders in the arts in our area. And we are going through a name change for the organization. So, and I can tell you a little bit about how that happened. I think that for, Janie, as you said, a lot of my work centers on injustice, and I have this, I feel like I have this calling to do better, to like make the world a better place or something really dreamy like that. And so it's always kind of been something that when I see or am surrounded by injustice, there's this kind of desire to address it and listen deeply is really a big part of the practice, a part of my practice too, as a curator and an artist. And I think that for a while, when I came to the Art Center as a curator and assistant director, there were rumors about the namesake, Helen Day being racist and anti-Semitic. And it was something that I had heard, but didn't really know any details about. And I also wasn't the director, and that's not an excuse, but we were thinking about a name change then. And as you mentioned, someone actually, Deborah Flatman, called in recently, who was an early director of the Art Center in 1993, I believe. And she said that they had been working towards this. She tried to change the name back then and came with some resistance. And so they decided not to. And I think it's been tried several times. And so it was this really interesting moment where we were in the process of a new strategic plan, and one that really centered on civic engagement and serving as a platform and catalyst for conversation and inspiration through contemporary art. And so that, coupled with meeting with the town manager, Charles Safford, who's really been fabulously supportive throughout this process, he wanted to have a lease with the town. We are a town-owned building, so he wanted us to have a lease with them, and which we hadn't before. It was just handshake. So we were formalizing this process, and as we were doing this, we were really digging deep into the history of the Art Center. And it was a wonderful opportunity to realize, A, we weren't beholden to the name, and which to be quite honest, Helen Day Art Center doesn't sing contemporary art. So it had been in other different years under different directors, it had been something that was more of a branding issue. Although I think with Deborah, it was actually about the anti-Semitism. But anyway, so I dug a little deeper, and I started to ask questions, and really difficult questions, and doing some research to find out the history of the Art Center and the history of these two, what these two women who were very, very strong, independent, progressive women for their time. So Dr. Lichtenthaler, Marguerite Lichtenthaler, and Helen Day Montanari, and they were lesbian lovers living together in Vermont in the early to mid 1900s. They had an abortion clinic. They were strong proponents of the arts and culture and library, and Dr. Lichtenthaler encouraged Helen Day Montanari to leave a bequest to start an art center and a library. And so, 40 years later, that bequest was actually used to save the building that we're in, and that's why we're there. But so the other part of that history is that they also had lodging, and they owned lodging, and they decided that they advertised that in a couple places, Aryans only, Gentiles only. And after speaking with someone who inherited their property, purchased their property from their caregiver who had inherited it, I was able to find out some answers to the questions that I had. And yes, indeed, they had swastika embroidered pillows and papers supporting eugenics, and they definitely held strong anti-Semitic and racist beliefs. And so it was really clear to us at this moment that, all right, it's time for us to make a change, because there's all of a sudden there's urgency to it. And like you said, it's trying, wanting to make sure that everyone feels that we're an inclusive organization, which we always have been, but we don't want that facade or that name to kind of block anyone. And, names and monuments and are really, that's who if we're named after someone, I feel like it's who we stand for. It's who we look to admire, and I think that that's not the case here. And so it's really important that we reflect, that our name reflects who we are and what we're doing. So that's a long answer.
Something strikes me so strongly. And I want to circle back. We're not done. I want to hear more about, about your conversations with your community. But what strikes me, and I think when we spoke before, my brain was exploding about the cross-stitched swastikas. And I didn't focus on what you said subsequently, which is that she had eugenics literature. So both of our institutions actually evolved in the framework of the Eugenics Survey of Vermont, which is stunning. And, is at its heart and at every level was a white supremacist organization. And the first director of the Fleming Museum was the founder of the Eugenics Survey of Vermont. And, part of our collections history, it frames everything about our history, but the collections that were acquired in the 30s and 40s and 50s were acquired in that framework of racial hierarchy. So these things, we can think that they don't affect how we run our organizations now, but they're really baked into them in many ways. And I applaud you enormously for doing this. And I think, it can't be easy because it is it has a long history for Stowe, and it's a beloved organization, and you are very embedded in the community. So I'm curious about conversations with the community about this. my sense is that I could be wrong, but this is, not something that kind of grew out of community, but, grew out of your value system and, your sense of what's right and what is going to make a more welcoming and safe organization for everybody.
Yeah, I think that you're right on that. It definitely came from myself, and when I presented it to the board, and they said, "We are 100% with you. We believe this as well. This needs to change. Let's do this." And so it was really nice to have that support. Once we, I think, announced it and wrote an op-ed for the paper, I think that it was, we opened up the conversation. So we didn't just say we're changing our name and here's our new name and we're done. We started, I mean, it was a multifaceted op-ed. It was talking about our new strategic plan. It was talking about our expanded education program, et cetera. But it really gave an opportunity for people to provide feedback and to kind of come in before we had already made the decision and closed that door. And I think it's really hard to make, to design or name by committee or community. So it's a balance between really wanting to hear voices and wanting to have that conversation, but also be able to have an efficient and effective process that really so what we've decided is to have really key stakeholders. The staff is really important in this, obviously, this decision, the board. And so we're really kind of working closely with the consultants who were on the board for years and years. So they really know the organization very well. But it opened up an opportunity to have conversations, and people have been writing letters to me or calling me on the phone. There have been plenty of letters to the editor in this small town. And I think one thing we talked about, Janie, was also that, I live in this town, but not only do I live in this town, but my husband is from this town, and my in-laws and my aunt and uncle are in this town. My children go to school here. I mean, it's not easy to kind of step out, especially when there are people in my tight circle who do not agree with me, and it's challenging. And I understand that. I hear that people are. I hear that it's uncomfortable, and I hear that it makes people uncomfortable to do this because what we're doing is addressing the history of Stowe, which hasn't really been discussed. And when it has, it's been quickly quieted. And so I understand that it's uncomfortable, that it creates a social discomfort, but I think that it's really important. I think it's really important to talk about our history. It's really important as institutions, just like Janie, you're doing, is to be vulnerable, to be open, to ask hard questions, to talk about things that are not okay with our institutions that are founded on this, white supremacy and this hierarchical structure. And it's not easy, but it's really, really important. And I think that with all of the people that are uncomfortable, I've been able to have some really wonderful conversations and just say, well, talk to me, tell me what it is that's making you uncomfortable, or can I explain why I don't think that this is cancel culture, or can I explain, and so we have these great conversations, and it really seems like it comes around, and that is that they understand more and that I hear them as well. And I feel like that's a big part of my practice as a director, curator, artist, but I think it's really important to open it up, even if it is really difficult. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'd love to hear, Janie, too. I mean, you speaking about what you're doing, because I think that that's been not an easy thing too, especially I think we talked about this as a collecting museum. I do not envy what you have in front of you.
Yeah. Well, there's so many aspects to it. And, all growing out of our history, as I described, which is a history of colonialist and white supremacist and eugenicist values, that created us. And then after that happened, 90 years of not dealing with it. And, for those of you who know me, I have been at the Fleming for not quite all that time, but for quite a bit of it. And it is a very intense personal and collective process. I mean, my staff and I we've really spent the last 9 months educating ourselves. First, the pandemic crashed down on us and created a bubble in which this was able to happen. And then with George Floyd's murder and, the subsequent movement, we just began talking about really looking hard at the Fleming's history and addressing it, and ultimately addressing it publicly. But the beginning of that was really, as I said, a matter of educating ourselves. And we're 9 people, predominantly white. And, we are all started at different points on a spectrum of understanding, what this process of becoming anti-racist and really being able to see what is around you and to see things that, we haven't, or some of us, including myself, haven't been able to see in the past. So there's collections, there are collections that were acquired, as I said, in the context of eugenics, of eugenics mindset, eugenics framework. There are portions of our collections that came to us through violence and looting. Our Native American collection, the part of it, the Ogden Reed collection that was formed in the 1880s by a UVM alum who assembled it. He was working for the government, forcing Native Americans onto reservations, and put this collection together. So there are very difficult, violent histories in our collection that we have dealt with intellectually, but it's not, it is not part of how we are presenting them. It's not acknowledged, and it's really not dealt with. It's known, but it's not dealt with, which is kind of the worst of all worlds, right? So there is a lot of work around the collections, but that's just the beginning. There really is it's a 90-year history of an institution that's based on centering whiteness. And our collection, our contemporary collection, while we've really been focusing on this for many years and trying to diversify it, it is largely white artists, relatively small body of BIPOC artists included. So we're really at the beginning. As I said, we've been working on this, working on educating ourselves and working on this individually and collectively. We have a value statement that is posted on our website that lays out our values and our intentions in what we're doing. But what we so far have been doing is talking amongst ourselves and not really communicating yet with our communities, with those that the museum serves and those that it doesn't serve. So the next phase of this is reaching out and listening to specifically our top priority is to BIPOC communities on campus and in the Burlington community. Listening and looking really hard and thinking about how we can change based on what we learn. And we're doing this within a parent organization within the University of Vermont. So this is a challenge as well. We are kind of on our own course in this. And, UVM has for many, many years talked about, and to be fair, over the years has made some meaningful efforts at really diversifying, but has a very long way to go. And so we see that one of our potential roles is creating a place on campus that feels safe and welcoming and responsive for everybody. So that's where we are now. And as was expressed in the article, we're taking things off the wall, creating conversations around them. The public face of the work that we've done so far, other than the statement of values and intentions that's up on our site, was an exhibition called Reckonings that we opened this past fall, that involved the Fleming staff and interns selecting works from the collection that spoke to our current moment. And these were, we all wrote our own responses, personal responses to them. And these were things that dealt with racism, that dealt with pandemic historically and now, that dealt with politics and with historic racism and a wide variety of things. But they were very personal responses, as opposed to what museums are known for, which is very objective or pseudo-objective perspectives that have no names on them and no context. So these were all signed by, with our names and our titles, what we do in the museum. And they were pretty heartfelt expressions. So what we're hoping to do for the fall, for next fall, is one of the exhibitions that we're looking at is a much larger, expanded version of that looks at that really makes clear the work that we're doing. And some of that will come out of the conversations that we will have. Some of it will come out of specific courses. Our curator of education, Alice Boone, has been doing really amazing work with faculty and students around these issues for all the time she's been here. And some of the conversations that come out of the classes are going to be featured with objects in that. It will probably also include some pieces that, that are problematic, that we've removed from the walls, as well as objects that we're talking about repatriating and looking at restituting. So it is a multi-pronged process that has only begun and is ongoing and really won't end if it's successful.
I love that as a great way to define success, is just that it's not going to end, that it's going to keep being there and keep being in the present. And I think part of this, what people ask, this has been going on for a long time. Are we going to lose momentum after a while or with this, or is it going to, because after so many, Rodney King and so many different moments in our history, and so far back, but there's, it seems like it ebbs and flows, and I feel like we need to just stay on it. And how do we keep that? And how do we keep being present and keep centering this type of work, which is so important? There's this, I was just thinking too, there was a term that Germany came up with, and it's something like Vergangenheit Bewältigung, and it's this copying the past, or coping with the past. And they and it's something that I think I just have been thinking about it because it's something that we have to continuously do. And I think that, Germany's done it through different laws and different ways that things are built, and obviously like the number of murals that have monuments and memorials that were erected since then. And I know a friend of mine is on here who knows the landscape designer who did the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, and that this like, as the New York Times said, this lynching memorial. And I think that, I've just been so invested in reading and listening and learning about monuments and renaming, obviously, because we're trying to do this, but how do we keep that? Sometimes it doesn't, there's this argument out there that like, well, you can't just start renaming everything. And on one hand, and then on the other hand, it's, well, you can't keep making, you can't keep things up that make people feel oppressed or not welcome or excluded. And I think that when you were asking about the conversations with community, one thing that I didn't mention, but that's really important, is that there was a real outpouring of support, and people not only within the Jewish community, but outside of, who just felt like, who just were saying thank you for doing this, because it's important. And if you look at this, like, the triangle of hate and white supremacy, right? It's like genocide is at the top, and at the bottom are like, ignore, just ignore it. Just kind of don't pay any attention to it. And it kind of funnels into this, and it seems extreme, but it's not. You have to take the steps at the bottom level to just speak out when there is injustice, which is not always easy. It's really hard, even in just conversation. And I feel like I've been really fortunate to be involved with the Racial Equity Alliance of Lamoille, and have been to be able to kind of dig even deeper into this work and to bring it into the Art Center and bring it into our strategic plan. And then, as you were saying, Janie, it's like this very personal, journey as well into, and it's very difficult work, and it's important just personally to be vulnerable. And we talked about this a little bit too, about being a curator, being an arts professional, being a director, and always being very professional, not showing emotion, being very objective. And then, having this moment where it's like, this is important to be able to be vulnerable, to be subjective, to really open up, and it's, that provides a little discomfort too, but at the same time, sometimes it's a relief to be able to really to do that. So I don't know what you think about that.
So true. And I'm actually laughing to myself because when Krista asked for photographs of us, I have two. I have the one that came out in the press release, and then I have one taken in the Fleming with my arms crossed in the gallery with my arms crossed, very straight up posture. And the other one was taken in my studio. And when I looked at them, I just reached a point where I can't use that other one anymore. It's, because with all the work that we're doing, to just be standing in the Fleming with my arms crossed feels just not right.
Yeah.
So it's it's absolutely a process. And the, I've had a very long career, very long traditional career in curatorial and directing, where emotion was definitely, not valued in the workplace. And I have to say, it's been, it was difficult initially. It really was. But at a certain point, it just becomes, it's this enormous relief. And you realize what, that is a kind of a suit we walk into. You press the on button, press the pro button and do it. But, for this work, you have to take that off and, and be vulnerable and, and be prepared to hear things that from all sides that are, that are really difficult. And, the other thing is, we're, as I said, we are now, only now, really beginning to reach out at the point where, we'll be reaching out and listening and talking and to, to groups, to individuals. There's certainly a lot of organizations in the Burlington area and in Chittenden County that have been doing this work for a long time. And we, at this point, we have not been working with them yet either. So, it's my feeling is at this point, this is the most important work that one can do, actually. And I share your concern and your fear that, back to Reconstruction, it's been a, it's been a ebb and flow of mobilization and then backing off, both through legislation and every aspect of it. And then I wanted to comment on the other countries kind of dealing with their own truth and reconciliation. And one of the things that just struck me so strongly in Germany was you can't walk a half a block without running into a bronze plaque that tells you who lived in this brownstone and was murdered in Auschwitz. Mm-hmm. And the way Germany has dealt with it is just, it's pretty thorough. And very, very different in this country, much longer history and no reconciliation, no. And little truth at this point. So,
it's just. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking about. There are a couple of things that what you were saying earlier about with your arms crossed and also the emotion. It's interesting because I think too, with this in a patriarchal society, there's this, as women too, I think we're really conditioned to be very polite and not be confrontational and not be emotional. And so there's a lot of, tone policing that goes on, which is not, unlike what happens a lot with the people of the global majority, I'll say. And so I think that that's really something to, this COVID and the pandemic also has helped, I think, to kind of break down things because we're all like in our living rooms or our, children's bedrooms or wherever we are. And it really humanizes all of us, which I think is crucial to understanding each other and, to really break it down and know that this person that you're talking to, and there's this project that I'm working on, the Lamoille Art and Justice Project. It's a collaborative project, one person who's working on podcasts, and he started on the podcast for this, and he was talking about how we all come to this work with our own biases, our own different experiences from different places, and whether like the people in, the PGM or BIPOC populations here in Vermont are different than, who grew up here, are different than people who came from different places. And same with everyone comes. And it's just, I felt like what he was saying was really profound in so many ways. But for me, and what I was going through with this project was also like, it just kind of resonated, because it said we're all human and we all are bringing different things, and we all have to just be open and know that we come with, that we're in this space with good intent, and it's gonna be challenging, it's gonna be hard, we're gonna mess up, make mistakes, and it's gonna hurt, and we're not gonna feel great, but we need to repair, and we need to move on. Because I think, with conflict and with collaboration especially, it gets very, very challenging. And but sometimes in order to get to that real sweet spot where it is a true collaboration, you really have to go through the challenges and those hard conversations. And the same with our institutions. I think, with what you're doing, Janie, and with the name change and the things that, we do with our public programs and exhibitions all the time, I think it's hard conversations. We're doing that on purpose. We're putting ourselves out there to be a platform for these challenging conversations, because I really believe that it's important to have those before we can kind of move forward and create understanding. So.
Yeah, that is so true. And, what you say about the challenge of it, it's, and that it really is a personal journey. And, in looking at my staff, at our staff, there's 9 of us. And, we are all coming to this with very, very different backgrounds. We are all in it 100%. But, we started from different places, and I am frequently so grateful about kind of the convergence, like, some of the things that my staff brings to it are personal history with basically being BIPOC and experiencing racism, or, seeing that happen in one's family. There's also Alice Boone, who has been absolutely central to this whole process, has a background in critical theory, and a background at the Art Institute of Chicago, where you were as well, at the museum, in an institution that at least the education department, was deeply embedded in this for many years. And, and others of us, have art history backgrounds, and and newspaper backgrounds, and all kinds of different backgrounds that land us wherever we are when we started this. And the thing it takes is commitment and stamina and strength, but the value that this really is the most important thing. And then the communication skills, which, as the challenge of communicating what our institutions are doing to a wide range of different constituents, different parties to this, who have very different positions and feelings in it, is the next piece of it. After there is some amount of solidity within oneself and within one's communal group, staff or otherwise. So it's not, I have to say, after a very not after, I'm still in it, but in a very, very long career. This is among the most challenging and the most gratifying and rewarding work that I have ever been involved in. But I feel like there was this bizarre historical confluence that hit us in 2020 and made a lot of people, and a lot of people in our world, in museums and arts organizations across the country are doing exactly what we're doing, some to lesser success or greater success. And some are, some haven't gotten beyond focusing on, their board and who's on their board and where their funding sources are coming from, which is critical. But I think it's, as you said, we have this momentum, but how it will continue and how it will continue within an institution or an organization once we're gone, or once we and our staffs are gone, our staff is gone. And as a professional arts administrator, we all know that we come into an organization and we do what we can, and then we leave, and then whatever happens. So the challenge here, I think, is planting the roots really deeply. And as I mentioned for the Fleming, since we're in a larger organization, a larger institution, it's kind of doubly complex, but making sure that the roots are so deep and so broad, and that the institution itself can attract future staff with the same values and the same goals, I think is very important. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole piece that we're not even, I'm thinking about that, but I think, collectively we're not dealing with that at this point. But yeah, it will be fascinating, and I hope depending on what day it is, I'm either hopeful or not hopeful as to the momentum and the collective momentum within society on this. Do we have any questions out there? It's 7:54. Wow.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. There are no questions in the chat yet, but I have one. So maybe I'll just kick it off, and then anyone can jump in, or again, write it into the chat and I'll read it out loud. Oh, Jen Berger raised their hand. So I'm just going to ask you this one quick one, and then Jen, you're next. One of the things, so I put in the chat, just so you all know, if you look at it, I put in the 7 Days article that was just published today, and Janie was quoted a few times in there talking about the Fleming Museum. The whole article was about what other museums are doing, or, like Janie just said about truth and reconciliation, and discovering what that truth is, or not ignoring, what the institutions have done. And one thing that you said, Janie, that I thought was really interesting, you said that the Fleming Museum is in the process of creating a values document, which will reframe and refocus its mission and set out its approach to reckoning both with racist pieces and its fraught history. And that values document, I know we're, as VSC, constantly working on documents of, how we want this place to be moving forward, how we're presented now, even what kind of tone of voice we want to have, who are we excluding by not having certain things, all that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm interested in what this values document is. Is it public? Is the Helen Day Art Center also working on something similar? Do you see this as a thing that, as you were saying, is going to be kind of across the board, like what we need to do so that we can set it out there? Go ahead. Anyways, Janie, I can go on and on. But.
Yeah, and I just want to also note that that last May there was just a huge sense of urgency on the part of arts organizations, including me, and some other people in my organization, to put some kind of a statement up. And we didn't do it. And again, I just want to point to Alice Boone and, and a few others and their wisdom that, that unless there is understanding and self-education and self-understanding backing it up, it's meaningless.
Mhm.
And it took us 9 months. It really took us every day of 9 months to reach the point where we were comfortable and felt, that we had expressed what our commitments were. And it is public. It's up on the Fleming website. And if you go to our main, just go to the homepage, you'll see a big black banner on top. And there's an arrow on the right that leads you to it. But it's a living document, as we say right up front. It will change. And again, this was conceived and written through a very long process, but it really involved just the staff. So as we start our listening and our conversations and our tours of various aspects of the museum with people, this will likely change in various ways. So I think it's important too to see it as a living document and as something that that will evolve.
Definitely.
I think we had the same reaction as well, Janie. I know we talked about this too, is that when everything started happening, when there was that urgency for arts, museums and organizations to kind of put up Black Lives Matter, here's our value statement, here's, we stand in solidarity. I think that we didn't feel like it was authentic, that it was more performative to quickly draft a value statement. We do have one on our website, but we didn't do it specifically for this, and it was there, and it is a work in progress. But people did ask me too on saying, hey, Rachel, where's your statement? Where's your, and I said, our statement is right now, it's in the exhibitions and the events that we've done. It's in Unbroken Current, and it's in Reclamation, and it's in, all of the artists that we represent and all the conversations that we're having. And we'll get there, but this feels like to do it right now feels so performative and like this tokenism. And I just feel like we can't do that. So we didn't. Just, like Janie said, it takes time and to really kind of dig deep and to do the hard work and make sure that everybody's on the same page and with it as far as staff and board. So our staff and board are all going through anti-racism and anti-bias training, and we're reading Me and White Supremacy together this month, and trying to just talk about it more and be in conversation. So
that's terrific. I just posted a link to the Fleming's values document.
Great, thank you. Jen, go ahead, you're up.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. I'm beyond grateful to hear what you're both doing, and the transparency and vulnerability and the difficulty. And you both said that this has been maybe a long time coming, and this is the time to do it. And I applaud you. And I've also been paying attention a little bit to how other arts organizations across the country are also reconciling with some of these same issues. And I'm also seeing a lot of them choosing not to. And I'm wondering what made you choose to do this, because it is a choice, and maybe what thoughts about trying to encourage other arts organizations to take similar steps.
Yeah, I feel, you know, in what I had referred to before, and I'm just speaking really personally now, is kind of a 90-year history. For me, it is 30 years at the Fleming, either curating or being director. And the weight of that, the weight of the unresolved histories and the violent histories that we have not been totally transparent about. And you know, it also came about as I described through the process that my staff and I have gone through, and just reaching the point where it was really untenable not to do anything about it, untenable to do anything other than what we're doing. And I think, you know, with organizations of any kind are the people that run them and you know, their staffs. That is who they are. And I think we can only expect this to happen, you know, when a director and a staff are ready and able to do it and really have the will to do it.
Mhm.
I hope that answered your question.
Any other questions? I bet there are a million questions.
I can't remember how to put my hand up here.
That's okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Tally Groves. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Janie.
Hi.
I'm just really impressed with you two, you and Rachel. It's very moving. I haven't been involved in, I mean, I'm listening to the news and, you know, held on to my seat. But to hear you two is really impressive and heartwarming and wonderful, especially in good old white Vermont, where when I first moved there, I'm still painting barns and love shacks, but one of my responses was, everything's white here. The people are white, the houses are white, the landscape is white half the year. And that's just how it's evolved there once we got rid of all the natives. But it's just so refreshing to hear you speaking about your process so personally and so with so much talent and skill in dealing with an incredibly difficult subject. So it's just really appreciate listening to you.
Thank you.
One of the things that we didn't talk about, I'm just looking at one of the comments in the chat about relabeling artifacts that may not be repatriated. The whole issue of being transparent about collections and doing so in a way that is not re-traumatizing, and you know, creating exhibitions that are, you know, that are essentially creating as much discomfort as the collections were when they were mounted with, you know, with no acknowledgement of their histories. So that's one of the things that we need and are looking, you know, to our communities to talk to us about, is how to, these are problematic. What are the best strategies to deal with them? So it's coming to the point where we are now is, as I said, just the beginning of it. Yeah, the challenges are enormous and can be dealt with in any number of ways. But yeah, Rachel, you were saying the other day that you are grateful you don't have collections to deal with.
I am.
But I should say also, part of the beauty, obviously, of doing what we're doing in an educational institution is doing it in an educational institution, and the learning opportunities that it offers to UVM students is just immense. So that's one of the pleasures of it too, and challenges.
I think this is me putting myself out there to be uncomfortable again, but you know, I think that I really appreciated what you said, Tally, and it also made me feel really uncomfortable too, because I feel like I shouldn't be thanked because I'm in this position, and really I need to be sort of stepping back and in the background and lifting other voices up. And it's, you know, it's easy for me to do this work. I mean, yeah, it's uncomfortable, it's hard, but comparatively, knowing the people that I know who have lived or grown up in Vermont, who are, and I'll keep using the people of the global majority because that centers people of color, but because they are the majority, but not in Vermont. Mm-hmm. But the people who have grown up here, I mean, that's traumatic. It's every day. And and I can't begin to understand what that's like. And so, yeah, so I'm just, you know, feeling like our work is easy, but it's what we have to do. It's what we need to do and what we should do. And is to make space for others and to do the right thing. So, so I just wanted to name that, to say that.
Thank you. It is, yeah, absolutely. It's about ultimately centering not our voices, but other people's voices.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I just made that up, but that's what I'm saying. Anyone? Come on, Kathy, I know you're dying. Not to put anyone on the spot, but.
Ask another question.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also curious, both of you are also artists, and I'm wondering if this conversation and thinking has found its way into your personal work.
For me, for sure. I'm working on a collaborative project right now that is PGM led, and it combines this. It combines oral histories, like all the things that are part of the practice that I've done for a while, but really I'm just in the background here, just trying to facilitate and organize this. There are amazing people that are amazing collaborators that are working to do podcasts and oral histories with PGM in this county, and mural projects with Juniper Creative Arts. We have some amazing facilitators for conversations, and we're doing a community-wide read of the book Stamped. And all of these are led by amazing people that are working in different organizations or have different skills, and it's awesome. And it's all about so, racial justice and anti-racism and advancing racial justice in this county, and really centering PGM or BIPOC individuals. And so I think part of this is part of this work is knowing that I've been doing this kind of work for a really long time, and this time I need to just step back, and that's really important. And yeah, so part of it is part of doing this work is a very personal, it's very introspective, and it's hard, and it's also really, really wonderful, and exciting, because I think that we all feel like, and I think there are a couple people on this meeting here who are part of it, but I think that we all feel like it's exciting. It has a lot of potential to do really good things here. So yeah, so it has always been part of my work and is right now again. So it's exciting.
What I am really interested in the fact that you could have done this as a curator or as a director and done this within the Art Center, but you're doing it as an artist.
Yeah.
Which
I thought about that too.
I think it's fantastic. But what strikes me is that the way you talk about it is from a very personal perspective, not institutional, which I think is actually really important for the project you describe. That it not be housed within an institution. That's just my impulse about it, my feeling about it. Mm-hmm. But I want to see it in an institution.
It's going to be outside. Okay. And on a website, Lamoille Art and Justice Project.
Well, thank you both for coming and talking to everyone today. I don't know that I can really frame a question around all this, but I think this is a time when things are really turned around, and it is really difficult to try and do things in completely new ways. But the thing that strikes me fairly often is that once you realize that things are different, that it opens up this new space in front of us that is pretty exciting and interesting. When I first came to Vermont, I took a trip to, various Canadian cities nearby with my kids, and I was just stunned to learn how much information is in Canadian museums about Native cultures that I had never seen in my life before. And it was even, my daughter wanted to go to the Shoe Museum in Toronto, and it was a shoe museum, but I learned more about Native Americans in the Plains, where I grew up in Chicago, than I had ever seen anywhere in the United States. And this wasn't even it was a culture museum, but it was not like the Field Museum of Chicago. It was the Shoe Museum. And I was just so confronted with the fact that our institutions have a very, very specific perspective in the United States. And there is just so much opportunity to frame things in a new way and make room for so much more to think about. So it's really exciting that you both were interested and willing and so enthusiastic about starting this conversation with us. So thank you.
We have one more question. Leslie Fry, are you still out there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. It's not really a question. I just thought I'd add a little bit of history that perhaps most of you are not aware of. I grew up in Stowe, and sometime in the 60s, when Governor Hoff was our governor, he created a fantastic program called something like the Vermont New York City Youth Program. And it went, I don't know how many years it went on, but I was fortunate enough to do it around the age of junior high school. And what it consisted of is bringing kids from New York City, mostly in the program I was in, they were from the Bedford-Stuyvesant area, and kids from Vermont to different campuses of the different state colleges at the time in the summer. And we all studied African American history. And it was, you know, it was a huge influence in my life. And I just, you know, in case people weren't aware of this program, that a Vermont governor, he totally initiated it. It was really him that made it happen. And, you know, perhaps it could be, a loose model for, I know things are changing with the state colleges and stuff, but a use of campuses in the summer and so on. I don't know. I just wanted, in case people had never heard of that, I just wanted to throw in that little bit of history. Thanks.
I was unaware of that he had done that. That's so interesting. Our first Democratic governor. Well, I just want to thank everybody who's here, and thank you, Rachel, and thank you, VSC.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you both were willing and able and actually excited to talk to us and have this conversation. I'd love to have you back. You know, I'd love to have you here in person, actually, you know, at some point in time. But I'm excited to see what, you know, both of your institutions or organizations are going to move forward with this. And I'm excited to see what VSC is going to do as well. But yeah, I can't thank you enough, really. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really been wonderful. And thanks everyone for listening in and for asking questions. And
yeah,
you have suggestions, feel free to email me or call.
Yes, thank you everyone for being
right?
here. Say that again. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I said how we can do things better.
Oh, yes, how we can do things better. Yes, and to the audience, I can't see any of you right now, but I just thank you for being here. So definitely stay tuned, and yeah, until next time. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.